Sounds good. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March meeting of the Kingston MRTA Task Force. Am I coming through loud enough? Hopefully. Okay. So apologize for the brief delay from our last meeting, but hopefully we've put together what's going to be an interesting and productive roundtable discussion for you here. We've got Chief Egidio Tinti from the Kingston Police Department. We've got Reverend Donald Mapes from the Kingston Police Commission. We've also got Mayor Steve Noble here. So for people who are joining us for the first time, how this is generally going to work, we're going to reserve the first block of time for the MRTA Task Force to have their discussion, to engage with our guests. Then we're going to briefly open it up for comments and questions by other members of the public. It's not really a format where we're going to come to final answers. The entire goal here is just to have these discussions, to have these conversations, and generally figure out where we want to see Kingston heading. So on that note, I believe Barbara Graves-Poller, our Corporation Counsel, had a few opening remarks that she wanted to make, so I'll turn it over.
Sure. Thanks, Jonathan, and Marissa for really spearheading this task force's meetings and bringing us all together. And I especially wanted to thank the mayor and Chief Tinti for being here to answer, or at least to continue this conversation about some of the thornier aspects of MRTA implementation, these law enforcement questions. So we're very lucky to have a member of the commission here. And I just wanted to make a couple of announcements that we've talked about during our email exchanges. One, there's some additional information on the White House website regarding the presidential proclamation on marijuana possession. That is relief that probably doesn't impact a very large number of individuals, but for those individuals who are impacted, it will matter. This is not expungement, but it provides us an opportunity for a certificate of pardon that might be helpful for folks who have qualifying federal marijuana convictions and then can use that information when they go forward and maybe have to deal with those consequences of those convictions in, say, a job or employment setting. And after tonight, I'm going to ask that we add that information about that pardon opportunity to the city's website. We already have, and this is just another reminder, some information about state court expungement. Some of that should be happening automatically by court staff, but they have 2 years to do it. And for some individuals, 2 years is a long time to wait and see if it happened. There are some other opportunities to gain relief. And so Jonathan and Marissa will talk with the task force, if there's time at the end, about some recommendations you may want to make about helping individuals within our communities to take advantage of those expungement opportunities. So I'm going to stop talking. We hopefully have some folks online, I think, who are going to join this discussion, and then I will turn it back over to Jonathan.
Okay, great. So with that, I'd really like to just open the floor up to anyone who has any questions, anything that they'd like to start the discussion off with. I did have a couple of just something's a little bit unusual. It looks like the wrong agenda was printed, but so please disregard that. If that looked a little bit strange, that is probably why. But at any rate, I do have some questions that have been raised in the past to kind of move the discussion along, but for the time being, I'd really like to turn it over to all of you.
I'll get started with not a question, but just a statement of one, thanks. This is my first opportunity. I think the last time we chatted was via Zoom a few months ago, and so it's great to be able to see you in person, and it's great to be able to be also joined with the rest of you online this evening. I want to say that the work of this task force has been really helpful already in helping the city to be able to better understand the laws and to be able to better prepare for this new industry here in Kingston. And I think that it helps to set us apart from a lot of our other municipalities in the Hudson Valley who have not been putting this effort in. And so I just want to thank all of you for your time and energy on this initiative. And so we're here tonight to be able to be a resource. I know that during some of your discussions, the question of law enforcement, just general enforcement, neighborhood issues, as well as the role of the police department and the police commission. And so we're happy to be able to answer any questions that you may have about how KPD may and we'll be working, with our both retail establishments and any lounges that may set up, as well as just cannabis use in general in the city. And this is all new for all of us as well, and so we're excited to be able to be kind of hopefully on the leading edge of this work if and when we're able to have this type of licenses issued in the Hudson Valley. But we're prepared now I think to try to answer some questions that I know has come up already. And but I just want to again thank you for allowing this process to unfold and for being a part of this discussion, because it's super critical for Kingston. And so this is Commissioner Don Mapes. You guys all may have met before, but he is one of our police commissioners. For folks who are unfamiliar with the police commission, there are 5 of us. We are all civilians, and it is the job of the police commission to set policy and practice for the Kingston Police Department. In essence, we are responsible for, as a body, hiring, firing, and then setting departmental policy as to how we handle issues. We also review all police complaints that come through. We also review all police compliments that come through. And we also are responsible for, being the connection to the community here in Kingston, and have served in that regard for many, many, many years. And so we, are here, and just want to say thank you for inviting us.
Joe Begans here. Thank you, Chief and Pastor and Mayor, for coming out and answering our questions tonight. Last meeting, we had a little conversation about something that I personally brought up about the actual districting of the sale of cannabis and the lounges being mostly on the Broadway corridor. As you know, across the street is the high school. And as you may know, in other areas of New York State, even where there aren't legal cannabis shops, there is cannabis being sold in stores. Mostly filthy black market stuff that gets people sick. They sell it for cheap. It has different flavors and things like that. So given the workload that the police department has already, do you foresee an addition of either resources or human police officer support to actually make sure that the people that are licensed to sell cannabis are selling cannabis? I mean, I know that the regulations of those stores that are legal will have guidelines just like a bar, people will be carded, et cetera. But I'm talking about corner stores and bodegas and things like that, where it's also competition for those who legally got their license and are selling the cannabis legally. So there's a twofold there.
So great question. Absolutely. And again, as the mayor points out, thank you for having us tonight. There is obviously a lot of concern about the enforcement level, right? That's both on whether we're going to hit it hard or not hit it at all. In areas like you mentioned, Joe, it's going to be a balance of both working with complaints that come in, right? And with a lot of that, we act on it like we do with drinking, alcohol, sale of alcohol or cigarettes. A lot of times we get called when a parent or another adult sees a child in there and buying, and then we would, in some cases, set up a sting operation. Resources, we always manage to put together what we need, whether we work with our own agency or other agencies. I know there has been talk about using regional law enforcement, either the sheriffs or the state police in some cases. But at this point, we don't really have a set up task force. We have a special investigations unit that's really assigned to narcotics, not so much anything to do with this. But if complaints were to come in, we would act on them. Absolutely. We would find the resources to do it.
One of the things that I'll just add is that as we move forward and the chief is able to get done what he needs to get done with the resources that he has, and he doesn't, he just gets it done, right? But I will say that, if additional revenue is generated at the local level to be able to, through the sale, the legal sale of cannabis in Kingston, um, I think that as we look to, kind of a resource allocation, I think we'd be really looking to this group and the community to be able to help us understand, where should we put those resources? Can we put those resources into another, officer whose responsibility it is to make sure that, there isn't illegal sales happening, of unsafe product at a corner store, or another officers that are working with our youth to make sure that, our kids are not getting into, cannabis at a, at underage. And so I think that's something that we would be really interested in kind of understanding from all of you, as you think about, suggestions for the city on how that tax revenue should be allocated. Should some of it go toward education? Should some of it go toward enforcement? How do we see, that revenue being, divvied up? And I think I would love your feedback on that. And that may provide more resources for the chief to do some more of this innovative work here in the community.
Hello, thanks for coming. So when we met last time, there was a map that was like not the final map. It had, the correct zoning spots where you could have one, but it did not have an overlay of like the buffer zones for schools and whatnot. And so I was wondering, it's like a two-part question, if that map is available with the second overlay on top of it. And also, I realize like as far as complaints, you would deal with complaints and things, but what about, do you foresee and are you already enforcing like the gray market? Or is that a very, very low priority? You know what I mean?
To knock the first question out of the way, because that's concerning our last meeting that we had with our Director of Housing Initiatives, Bartek Stardai. He did follow up with me after the fact, and there was some difficulty overlaying the school districts on the actual map, so we haven't been able to put that together. But we did look into it, and it just didn't seem to be possible with the technology we had here. But
Just from a mapping perspective, I think now that the rules are kind of final in terms of, one of the questions that I have, and I don't know because I'm not familiar enough, is child care centers included as part of schools? So we have a lot of daycare centers in Kingston that are also kind of both family daycare and then, traditional daycare like the YWCA or the Center for Creative Education. Are those facilities considered part of schools? They fall in the same kind of school zone and traffic code in terms of where you can get a lower speed per mile per hour. So I don't know if this, the MRTA spells out child care centers differently than schools that are K through 12. And so I think that's something we would want to look into. And we should be able to work with our team, whether it's our GIS professionals, which are, GIS is a computer mapping program, to be able to pinpoint those. And if our staff can't do it, that's something that we can ask the county information services department to do for us, to be able to create that map. Once we identify what we want to have overlaid over our new zoning code, so we just need to find that answer. Is it just schools, or is it schools and child care centers? And is it just state permitted child care center? Is it any family daycare? Those types of, and it's 500 feet, I think, around a school, maybe something like that. So again, we can narrow that down. And I do agree, though, that a map is going to be really important, not only from a enforcement perspective, but I also think it's a really important map to have in terms of a industry, kind of promotion. Hey, come to Kingston, and this is where you can do it. But this is also where you can't. And I think for us to be able to have a city map that basically says that up front, I think is just going to be really easy for people to go through our process and at the kind of zoning level, if we have a map that shows them where they can and can't have these facilities. So at least to start. So I think that that's something that we can follow up on. Yeah, and then
Sorry about that. The gray market, you mentioned about the priority level on, I can tell you that it really is a low priority right now unless we get the complaints. Our main concern, obviously, everyone knows is the heroin addiction, the epidemic that we're trying to deal with. And so our SIU is really focused on that right now. Clearly, with the number of overdoses we've experienced in and around the county, it's difficult to focus on anything else. So, but again, if we start to get complaints, that's usually the first thing we do is, okay, let's get a couple of officers with the school resource officers. We're very fortunate they do have their ear to the ground, so to speak, with a lot of the students. So in case, I'm always surprised by the wealth of information that students share with these SROs, and in turn they share with the detectives. So I think it's a very good program to have, that they're the go-between. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very confident that'll continue.
I want to commend having cannabis be a low enforcement priority. I think, in defense of the current gray market, while the legal market continues to be stymied by what I feel is unbased lawsuits, the gray market provides really important source of cannabis for medical patients who don't have access to good quality medical cannabis. There is a dispensary nearby. It's not a very great dispensary, but it's a dispensary nonetheless. And the gray market does provide, I am sure, to many medical marijuana patients in the region who can't get access to product, access to the medicine that they need for their care. So I think enforcement of the gray market should remain low even after we get legal shops. There is state legislation that is being developed by the original champions by the MRTA. And I think for the next meeting, I could volunteer to put a summary of those proposed changes together. Some of them are that I've heard about or read about, I think will be important, and possibly the Common Council could support those changes if that's warranted, or support the legislation if warranted. But I think what I've seen is they're going to really try and lower the cost of medical marijuana for the patient, which I've brought up medical marijuana before. It's a real passion of mine. I think that's going to be really important, getting patients what they need and not fleecing them for it. And I think they are also in the legislation going to make changes to enforcement for the gray market, to allow for imposing penalties for property owners that allow bodegas and corner shops to sell gray market cannabis, because that's a real concern, particularly in New York City. I've not seen so much gray market cannabis being sold at bodegas and head shops in our area.
Hey, Ruben, I'm just going to hold you for 1 sec. We want to just keep it to the task force discussion to start with, and then we'll turn it over to the public, but we'll get you on shortly.
Jonathan, did you have any other questions that you think have come up over the last couple of weeks or months that maybe you've heard that maybe we should address while we're here?
Yeah, certainly. And not to put anyone on the spot, but this was actually a question that we did get from Steve Ellman. This is one that's come up in the past, and I see he's with us by Zoom here, so I'm going to ask it on his behalf to start, and then if he'd like to jump in or anyone else would. An issue that's sort of come up in the past is the issue of enforcement around and outside these facilities that are going to be either selling marijuana products or allowing for consumption on site. So there's a question of how KPD is planning on, or if KPD has any plans for sort of surveillance of these facilities, policing outside of these facilities, and just generally how to achieve those goals while sort of avoiding a bias in policing as well.
We have no plans on surveilling or enforcing anything there. That really, I mean, I think once the application is approved for the sale shop, unless we actually get a complaint, no, it really is. I keep going back to it. I apologize. It really is the same model for underage drinkers, right? If we get there and we get a complaint that the clerk is selling to 19-year-olds and not carding them, then we'll try to set up a sting just to make sure, and again, follow through with a fine. But we really don't see any type, even our officers, I got to tell you, it's been a rare occasion, even before all this, that marijuana there was an arrest for it. We just didn't do it. And I can tell you, I came out in 1992. It just, if people were blowing marijuana in your face, it'd be a different story, right? But it really, a UPM arrest wasn't anything that we went after. It wasn't anything that we actively went after. So, but yeah, in our case, for the surveillance part of it, no, there's no intention to do that.
Okay, I want to speak to that. I just want to make sure, because that is an issue. That's one of the main reasons that police use to pull people over, even when there's no smell of marijuana. They say it's a smell of marijuana when it comes to Black people. So it might not have been the norm for others, but for Black people, I'm here to tell you, it's definitely been a problem. So I worry about it too. I'm hoping that it doesn't become where Black people are a target when it comes to this, but I have a strong feeling that's exactly what's going to happen. So that's one of my concerns. So I'd like to hear from the chief on that, and definitely you, Mr. Mapes, since you're a part of the police commission, what is your take on that, and what do you see as far as because any misconduct would have to go in front of you as a police commissioner. So I'm a little bit concerned about I would like for one of you, if not really both of you, to speak to that.
I'll take the first part if that's okay, Commissioner. So as far as the enforcement part of it, Liz, you're saying if we make a traffic stop and we smell marijuana in the vehicle?
No, not at all. I'm just saying Black people being targeted, because that's been an excuse for years, even when marijuana is not being smelled in a car, and it turns into harassment. So I don't want, there are going to be colored people using dispensaries, and I don't want them to be pulled over. I'm concerned about them being targeted and pulled over, because there's a lot of bars. And if we're treating it like bars, there's a lot of bars. And I know, and in your experience, the bars that are targeted mainly are the bars where Black people hang out. I know bars where there are cops and white people hang out, and I don't see those bars ever being targeted. So I am concerned, especially when you say, this is what's going to happen. This is how you're going to handle it in a way, the sort of same way as alcohol.
Okay.
If that makes sense to you.
Okay. Are you talking about specifically in Kingston or just law enforcement in general?
Kingston.
Okay.
That's in my experience in Kingston.
Okay. Yeah, I tell you, we go under regular training both at the academy level and in service. We do recognize that there are concerns about social inequalities when it came to this stuff during the arrest years ago. Our training has matched the concerns of the community. We have stepped up, especially after everything we went through with George Floyd and the re-envisioning task force. I think we've covered that in detail. I want to believe, and I truly do believe, that the officers in Kingston are trained better than that. But as you mentioned, there's always a mechanism to make sure that we adhere to those policies and procedures, and that is the police commission, obviously. And they do, as the mayor mentioned before, they do oversee the policies and procedures. They review any types of use of force that goes in front of them. And on top of that, they also review any complaints or compliments that are put in front of them. So should any accusations be made against an officer or officers that they are doing what you're saying, then that would be reviewed by the Civilian Commission.
And I'd like for Mr. Mapes to speak to that as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, exactly what he has said, if there's a large number of African Americans or, people of color being pulled over, opposed to people of non-color, then that's an issue that we would definitely deal with as the commission. Okay?
Yeah, I get that. Is it something that you, as a commissioner, is it something that you've been discussing, or is this the first time you've actually thought about it or talked about it? Is in this meeting tonight, Mr. Mapes?
This is the first time I ever thought about it.
That's where I'm concerned at. That's why I'm a little bit
Why is
concerned.
that? I just got on the commission.
No,
I
you've been
just
on the
got on the commission.
You've been on the commission actually a little bit over a year, if not longer. So, and we know this has been coming up for over a year. So that's why I'm concerned about it if it hasn't been a discussion, because we know there are going to be some issues. So you being on the commission, I think it's something that a discussion needs to be started if it's not already being had. And you just said you just got on and this is the first you talked about it. So, you know, if I want to leave you with anything, it's to make sure this is a part of the police commission's discussion.
Oh, yeah,
Because I
it
definitely
will be.
foresee issues. Yeah. Okay.
I just want to just share that, we have not had any complaints to the police commission about racial profiling in the city of Kingston. And so, our officers, follow all proper protocols and procedures when it comes to pulling someone over or making a police stop. There has to be cause. We train all of our officers in procedural justice and have doubled those trainings over the last couple of years. And I think it's just really critical for us to recognize that, we don't pull over people just to pull them over. There has to be a reason that we're making a traffic stop. And, with any type of, substance use, whether it's alcohol or cannabis, the officers are trained and, protocols on understanding whether someone is under the influence or not when driving in a vehicle. And so, again, they have a variety of training, and the chief can go into more detail about what goes into those training to be able to make sure that our officers are identifying when someone is in some sort of inebriated state from whatever type of substance they've taken and then decided to get behind the wheel. As folks who are familiar, with the work of the police department, we also only have, less than a dozen officers out at any one moment on the street. And so, even doing those types of DWI type checkpoints are something that the state police handles a lot of. And I'm sure that that will continue, as cannabis use happens in lounges and bars or whatnot, just like alcohol use does. The state police is really, they take a lot of effort in that area, where our police officers are generally responding to calls for service. We have about 25,000 calls for service every year with about 7 to 10 people on each shift. As you go every 8 hours. And so I just think that that's the bigger picture here. Our goal of a police department is that we do not currently, in front of bars or restaurants or in front of soon-to-be cannabis lounges, we don't park our cruisers waiting for someone to come outside the place and then pull them over. There has to be a cause. There has to be, suspected, I don't know what the official, reasoning, what we call it, but, we have to have our reasons. And, again, our officers are not at all, going to just be like, ooh, I think that could be a marijuana user who's driving and pull them over. Like, we just don't do that. We have to see obvious signs, and they have to be able to follow protocols. And if they don't follow protocols, that would then come before the police commission. And so that's why, in particular, we haven't had a lot of discussions, about how we would handle cannabis in terms of law enforcement, because we've generally, going into this, treating this just like we would any alcohol use, because to us, this is, the same type of, it's legal, and should be treated as legal unless someone breaks a New York state law in terms of how they're using that product. So that's just a broader perspective on kind of the work that we're doing. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about what goes into kind of the training of our officers in terms of identifying drug use.
I'm going to speak to that. I'm going to speak to that. I get what you're saying, Steve and Chief, and I get, I get everything that you're saying, and I hope that is how it is. As far as the training, you don't even have to go into the training. These officers are trained. They're trained to do one thing. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, and I'm not going to let either one of you sit here and pretend like things are going to run smooth. No, they don't sit their cruisers in front. Yes, they do target Black people, and you do not have to be doing anything to become a target. I'm not going to sit here and entertain nonsense. As far as training goes, police are always trained. We've been down this road in all of our police and community meetings about the training. It does not stop anything. You cannot train a person's character. And as far as the state troopers, that's just an out. No, Kingston police do not stop DWIs. Now you have 2 state troopers that are animals out there and they're calling people animals. And we're not going to ignore that fact. We're not going to. So this all needs to be looked into. Police commission you need to get it together before we even get anything legalized. We need to get it together. You, me, and the chief know exactly why I'm sitting here saying this. This is not our first rodeo. This is not our first conversation. The reason we have a relationship is because of these behaviors, and the training has already gone on.
Well, Liz, as you know, the police commission always is willing to have you come and speak to public comment, as you have done in the past. But I would say let's stick to marijuana here, and you know how we handle this. And you know,
Yeah, let's try. Go ahead. Let's move forward.
So, Chief, do you want to talk a little bit about training?
Sure. So in the police academy, everyone goes through standardized field sobriety testing. It's a 3-day class where officers are taught how to deal with intoxicated drivers. The one challenge we have is there's no personal breath test device that can be used at the scene in case there appears to be impairment and there's no smell of alcohol. It doesn't fall within that. But we do have on staff a DRE, drug recognition expert. That officer has undergone weeks of training where they are tested on, or trained and tested on their ability to determine the level of impairment and the type of drug being used. Do they get called often? Yes. This officer is one of, I want to say, half a dozen in the area in Ulster County, including the state police and sheriff, that can get called out. We do have, on a speed dial type of thing when he's not working, and they'll come out there and run the test based upon the initial officer's observation. Say, listen, I got somebody who's impaired. They're going all over the road. I don't smell alcohol. Clearly, they got to be on something else. Can you come out? And then they'll make that test right there on scene. It is extensive. We had 2, that one of them got promoted to the position of detective, no longer available for patrol response, but we do have other agencies in the area that we can reach out for. But at the minimum, the officers are trained in at least impairment detection at the scene, and then at that point, whether or not, I can tell you they are not able to determine right then and there if it is drug-related, what they're on. They just can't do it. There's no, a PBT is usually what they, you've seen them like a mini breathalyzer at the scene. That won't work, obviously, for cannabis. So, but there is quite a bit of training both at the state level, at the academy, and our in-service. And as Liz mentions before, we talk about training a lot during these community meetings, and we're always trying to improve. A lot of it is driven at the state level. Clearly, one of the things that Governor Hochul put in place once this became legalized is that there will be funding through the revenue to put out more DREs just for this thing. First and foremost, obviously, is the safety of the people on the streets, right? We have to be careful of that. And we say the enforcement, it really is enforcement because limited enforcement, but more safety driven than anything else. We don't want somebody behind the wheel who shouldn't be. Right, lives are at stake. We just can't have that, whether it's a state trooper, a sheriff's deputy, or city of Kingston cop. But as the mayor mentions, we do very little DWI patrols. We put them out funded through the county, through Stop DWI, but it is not a regularly scheduled patrol function for the city of Kingston Police Department. And as the mayor mentions, we don't put a car out waiting uptown for someone to drive past because they're leaving the bar. We just don't have those resources. If we see somebody impaired, great. And in some cases, the majority of the arrests made for DWI are made as a result of an accident. They run into a telephone pole or hit a curb or something like that, another vehicle. But normally it's not a regular routine patrol function that they're assigned to. It really is we're call driven in the city, so.
Okay, so we do want to, at some point here, create a space for members of the public who are joining us to add any of their comments, any of their questions. But before then, if there are any members of the task force who haven't had a chance to speak yet, or final comments from task force members that they'd like to make before we open it up for a minute, this would be the time.
So also for enforcement, what about, people's homes and how many plants they're growing and like that kind of enforcement?
I can tell you that is really, really low. I don't even know if I could say it's on the radar, to be honest with you. I think we would act on complaints, right? Silly, if a neighbor looks out their backyard and sees this big harvest going on, yeah, we would act on that. But other than that, I don't think, I know that there's not one officer down there. It's going to be one, two, they're just not going to do it. It just won't be.
So with that, if there are no final comments from members of the task force for right now, we'll turn it back over in a minute. Did have a couple of comments over Zoom from Ruben Lindo as well as from Kavita Paria Sanchez. First, I'd like to just turn it over to Ruben for a minute and then turn it over to Kavita right after.
Thanks, Jonathan. Chief and Mayor, thanks for joining. This is a pretty important topic. Most of you know who I am and what I represent in this industry. For those of you who don't know, I've been in the legal cannabis industry for 8 years, regarded as probably one of the more prominent vocal voices on this legalization movement. I work with the New York, I spoke recently, last summer, to the New York State Police Chiefs Association about enforcement at their annual conference. One of the things that I can tell you is the tone and temperature around the state, not just in Kingston, right? And Chief and I have kicked this back and forth since the day Andrew Cuomo signed this into law. One of the things that has become a low priority around the country is enforcement. And that's why we see what we see in New York City with over 2,700 illicit dispensaries open. That's why we see what we see in other jurisdictions around the state with people pulling up in food trucks selling cannabis. They've really left a loophole, and it's an unfortunate loophole. And we as activists and really responsible manufacturers and business leaders are really urging Liz Kruger and Crystal Peoples-Stokes to put back their committee and reimagine and revision what this looks like to protect the industry. I know that what we're seeing and what we're hearing, and I heard Liz's concerns too, and I've spoke about this at length. And I think there are protections under the MRTA that are going to protect all classes of people. But when it comes to specific targets and using the smell of marijuana, Chief, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but section 222.A took that, you guys, that's no longer a probable cause issue. So they'd have to come up with something else, right? And just to be fair, when we're talking about rolling out and putting these cannabis businesses in certain jurisdictions, certain locations, I put a note up to Jonathan. The MRTA spells out schools specifically. Daycares are being left up to the municipality to rule on, but if the daycare is government funded, it's going to be treated as a school from the state's eyes. But there are a lot of private daycares, right? So this task force is going to be really, you have a daunting task, right? To work with zoning and come up with what that looks like and how to make sure that the distances are correct and the locations. Right now in the card program, the card program is violating that. In the very first dispensary it opened, it's within 750 feet of what's designated as a daycare school center. But they left that up to the city of New York and Mayor Adams' office to designate and either give them an override or permission to do it. Look, this cannabis industry is tricky. I've done this now. This is my 22nd state and my 3rd country that I've been involved in legalization, and I'll be in my 4th country starting in June in Zimbabwe. I think that when we really focus on the brass tacks of this, it's up to the task force to work with the government agencies in the municipality, and the municipality to really hear their concerns so that when we draw these lines, we're not red line, or as we call it in cannabis, we're not green line, right? We're not lumping all the cannabis businesses in poor sections. We're not, there's ways of doing it. And I applaud this group for what you've done. And I looked at that map extensively, and it's hard to do an overlay right now because we don't know what we don't know, right? The state's left us in a perilous situation and a powerless situation. So, again, I commend this group and thank you for having me on, and I'll continue to listen.
Okay, then next up, we also had Kavita Paria Sanchez. Hopefully I'm getting that correct. And she mentioned that she also had some slides prepared that she wanted to show, so I've allowed her to share her screen. So I will turn it over to her now.
Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you to Barbara for inviting me here today. My name is Kavita Paria Sanchez, and I'm the CEO of Cannabronx. We're a small grassroots advocacy organization in New York City, which is obviously where I live. But just as a fun fact, my family has purchased a home in Ulster, close to Sullivan, and so we've started to slowly move up there, spending a lot of time and loving the area, and really appreciating this dialogue. My background is as a civil rights attorney, and I've spent my career in public service, and so that's where I'm coming into the work. And so I think really understand the challenges of being on the government side of things as we grapple with this kind of wild west. And yes, I did have a deck, but I think there's so many juicy pieces here that came up in the questions that I'll just take them all, or take many of them. I'll start with, what do I want to cover here? I wanted to talk a little bit about your approach, get into the illicit discussion a little bit, the state regulations, tax revenue, and jobs, and what this will look like money-wise for Kingston, as well as every community across the state that has opted in. So just to start, I am really, really impressed by your very thoughtful approach to cannabis. It is not easy. It's been stigmatized for years. We've all had to make like a narrative kind of shift in our minds. And it sounds to me, I think treating it like alcohol in many ways is really the right way to go here. Focusing on safety, thinking about our young people, and being really cognizant of the illicit market and what we might do there. Just to back up a little bit, I noticed that there were a lot of questions related to implementation. So the state passed this law 2 years ago, and all of the implementation, all of the ways that they want to roll it out, 90% of it is not yet worked out. And so we are in a great state of limbo. And just as further context, in December, the state released 282 pages of regulations around, I think it was 7 license types. Those rules have not even been put out yet. The state is still reviewing public comments, and those rules we don't expect to be out for months. So again, a lot of uncertainty, and so it makes sense that you have all these questions that unfortunately nobody has real answers to quite yet. And so, I encourage you to keep logging those questions. And I think there are experts who can start to answer them, but really we won't know a whole lot until later this year, next year. It's going to take several years for this all to normalize from what we can see. I wanted to touch on the illicit market very briefly. Folks may have heard that over the weekend there was a robbery at a illicit smoke shop in Jamaica, Queens. A young, I think 20 or 22-year-old Black man was shot and killed in that incident, and that's tragic, right? And it's essentially a replication in many ways of drug violence violence that we all saw for decades, or some of us saw for decades around the city and country. And we don't want to replicate that. And I think the illicit shops represent this like 2-for-1 opportunity, right? You go in, you get the money, you get the drugs, and it's a boon. And so I think without appropriate enforcement authority, and I think that is an open question around the state, particularly at the state level, but I know the city's sheriff's office is struggling with it, PD is struggling with it, figuring out, what are the parameters what are the powers that law enforcement has around the illicit shops, and also how do we enforce in a thoughtful way where we're not over criminalizing folks again, which is really why these laws are here. So we agree, the safety of the product, safety for young people, is really, really important. And I think that is, I'm not sure what the scale of this is in Kingston, how much you're grappling with this, but in New York City, there are at least 1,300 shops in the 5 boroughs. And so it's a massive issue. And to the extent that there is, a significant amount of shops in Kingston, it really matters. And I'm not usually the one to say, yeah, let's go after all the people. But it matters for all the reasons we know about, but also there is no way for the legal market to be successful if the illicit shops are there. You can buy it at the cheapest price on the market, and folks who are trying to do it the right way won't ever be able to succeed.
Kavita?
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you short here, but I do want to, at the very end, just turn it over to the task force for sort of final discussion. If you just have any final comments.
Sure. Yeah. Well, okay. So then I would actually just like to turn it over to a special guest from New York City to actually Jeffrey Garcia, who was formerly with the NYPD, retired 7 years ago, now leads the Latino Cannabis Association, has many other accolades that I will leave out for the sake of time, and is here with Catherine Pichardo, who does government relations for Jeffrey Garcia's organization. So Jeff, I'm sure you have a million thoughts here.
And Jeff, sorry, not to cut you short or anything. If it's possible to sort of keep this maybe in the 3 to 4 minute range, just so we have final time to discuss, that'd be great. You are still muted, I think.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, Kavita, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much to everyone here for having me on. Ruben, by the way, I mean, I thought your points were all, right on the money. And like Kavita said, I think that there's a lot of uncertainty, right? We still don't know what the rules and regs look like. We still don't know. I mean, obviously we can go by a lot of what the SLA does and what their rules, but it looks like the MRTA is going a little bit further when it comes to rules and regulations around dispensaries. And like she said, we're having a real big issue in New York around the illegal shops. And obviously that is something that needs to be worked on. I understand everybody talks about this gray area, that there is, but I sometimes I don't get it. I don't understand why they say there is a gray area. I mean, you can't just open up a liquor store without a license. I mean, I think you would get shut down rather quickly anywhere in the state if you just go and open up a liquor store or a restaurant and start selling, rum and coke to people. So I don't understand why it's so difficult to say if you don't have a license, you can't sell this. And there should be some enforcement. I think that, even here in New York City, with these 1,300 plus shops, or whatever the number is, that can really hurt this legal market. It can really hurt these card applicants. And, so you want to talk about the people most affected? Those are the folks that were really affected, went to jail, now have an opportunity. And now the same system that they're going to try and work in is going to hurt them. Why? Because these illicit shops, like Rita said, sell product at a much less at a cheaper price and probably even better quality. Now, a lot of today I was talking to a local guy that I grew up with in my neighborhood that sells in a corner, inside a van. And, for all intents and purposes, I sell great products. I sell better product than they have in the stores. And it's not, it doesn't have any other chemicals or anything. I get my stuff, and it's legit and it's great. If they were to come and test it, it would be better than any product out there. That gentleman will be a competitor to these legal stores, and something needs to be done about that. And I think that he would eventually like to get into the legal market. But the problem is with that as well is where that market is and the slow rollout. I understand we want to get this right. I understand that we want to get the regulations correct around this. But something needs to be done to really speed things up so that those folks most affected, especially in this card program, really open up these stores and they can really start working in this legal market. And real quick, when it comes to enforcement, to the police chief, I mean, I commend you and obviously your approach to this and how you talk about the non-enforcement part of it. I think that a lot of people may not know this, but for years, even in NYPD, after they started kind of decriminalizing it and not arresting people for marijuana, arrests went down a lot. Obviously, I know, Liz, you've had your concerns. I've seen how it can go the other way as well. I get it. I understand it. I was in that world and understand how it could have gone the other way. And I hope that that is what no longer happens, right? And we know there can always be bad apples. The police chief knows that. But I think in a small police department like that, they probably have a better handle of this, or should, right? And I think that, he's and the commission are doing all the right things. So I hope that you guys have a great market up there and thriving market. And obviously, in, a small town like that, different from New York, I hope that, the legal dispensaries do really well. But I can see that,
Jeff,
you guys also have, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Again, thank you for joining us here and for all the comments that we've received. With the last few minutes, I would like to turn it back over to the task force with any final questions, remarks, particularly anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet.
I've spoken, but I'm just going to say that for our guests who just spoke, I think this task force is more than welcome, more than happy to welcome residents from outside the city of Kingston to speak at the task force. I think we just please reach out to the task force and schedule your time on the agenda, and we will welcome to hear your thoughts. But really, this time at the end of the meeting is for Kingston residents and those immediately around our community to give us comments so we can better serve our local community.
Yeah, and this also, just very briefly, is partially an internal failure on our end, maybe not being clear enough about the duration of some of these comments, and we will address that in the future.
Yeah, I think just to at least to wrap up our part, I just want to thank everyone for inviting us to be a part of, answering your questions. And, as we go over the next couple of months, if additional questions come up, and as we start to understand the rules and regulations better, and as we, start to identify locations in the city that fit within the parameters, we're happy to help. And, as the mayor, we are excited about this industry for Kingston. We want to protect our residents, and making sure that, everyone is as safe as possible here in Kingston. And but I think for us, we're learning and excited to, continue to learn with you all and to work with all of you so that we can have, the best informed and best guided, practices and policies when it comes to cannabis. And hopefully that will set us apart from other communities in the Hudson Valley. So thank you for the invite. And again, if there's anything else that we can do, please let us know.
We are getting close to our time here. If Stu or Steve or anyone who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, if you had anything that you'd like to ask or add, We'd be happy to have you.
Hello.
Oh,
Hello. Hi.
yeah, John as well.
Yes.
I was
No,
talking to you
just
so much at the beginning.
I know. I would just like to add for Kavita and Jeff, and I agree with them with the illicit sale, and I think that does have to be limited because it's going to hurt licensed businesses. Also, okay, well, your friend had really good product, but how do we know that? How do we protect the community from someone who maybe that don't? How do we protect the community from someone that may be selling to minors, my grandchildren per se, which I might take I might take extreme exception to that. So I just wanted to throw my 2 cents in there and say that I definitely agree with them on the bodega type of corner store sales versus licensed. Definitely need to keep a lid on that. That's about it.
I encourage task force members to call up and visit the head shops and bodegas around Kingston and Ulster County and try and find cannabis products. Maybe you'll find one. It's just not happening in our area that much.
Not yet. Not yet. We got 1,300 in New York City. We're not New York City, but it's not happening yet. And if we don't control it, it's going to get out of control. Well, that's a redundant sentence, but you know what I mean.
And that's a great place to advocate for the state legislation that Senator Liz Krueger and Assemblywoman Crystal Peoples-Stokes is putting together, because the enforcement mechanisms don't really exist right now, and that has to be addressed in fixing and amending the MRTA.
Okay, so with that, we are at our time for tonight. Again, thank you so much to Chief Tinty, to Reverend Mapes.
Could I just add one more thing? I'm sorry. Just one more thing. I think as we kind of go forward, and as we talk tonight about whether it's the revenue for this or law enforcement issues, it would be really helpful, if the commission or the task force could provide me as the mayor, and whether it's the police commission or, but really me as the mayor, to be able to have an understanding of, like, what do you want me to do and what do you don't want me to do? Do you want us to prepare a map that shows where you can and cannot locate? Do you not want us to do that? Do you want us to share the revenue with law enforcement, with an education campaign, with some sort of community program, or do you not want me to do that? What do you want me to do? And I think that as we, soon these stores are going to be allowed eventually. The lawsuits are going to get figured out. It's going to happen, and before we know it, we're going to get an application, and there's going to be one somewhere in Kingston, right? And at that point, revenue is going to start coming in. And so I would just say in the next month or two, it would be really great for me to be able to get a firm, this is what I want the city to do. This is what I'd like the city to do. This is what I think the mayor should do, and to best support this program. And I think that, I don't know if you guys have started something like that already, but I think it would be super helpful for me to then be able to share with my relevant department heads, whether it be the planning board, the police department, our police commission, and all of the other folks who are going to be involved in cannabis, our health and wellness department, everybody, smoking in the parks, and, we've got lots of layers here, right? And so I would love for us to be able to have a clear, what you want. And again, we'll try to do our best, to follow that guidebook, but I'm a little worried that we are, getting to the time where these things are going to start popping up. And that I'm going to need to start making some decisions on our end. And so and maybe I could have said that the next time we came, but I felt like I'm here and maybe I should deliver that message now, so you guys can start thinking about that, for the next couple of months. So, sorry, I know you're about ready to end.
No, it's fine.
Give homework right at the end, and then I leave quickly, and then, right? So.
Yeah, but no, I think that really sort of touches on ultimately what really the role of this task force is going to be, just to hear these concerns and to make these recommendations. And I mean, I recognize particularly with this topic relating to enforcement and just the legal climate around this is something that's really touching on a lot of very painful history and a lot of present injustice as well. So this was going to be a difficult conversation no matter what, but that's ultimately what we're here for, to have a forum for these sorts of conversations. So again, really, thank you so much to everyone who came out tonight, everyone who participated. We are very grateful to have you, and you're really doing a great service for us here in Kingston. So thank you.